In this lecture, all about supply, we're going to cover learning targets 2.2, and then later we're going to go into 2.4. So to start us off, we see here a picture of an individual supply curve, and what this represents is the relationship between the price charged for an item and the number of items that a seller would be willing and able to supply to the market at each of those prices. And you'll notice that as the price increases, the number of haircuts that Anton is willing and able to do per day or produce per day from his barber shop increases, and as the price drops, the number of haircuts that Anton is willing and able to produce per day decreases. So the relationship between price and quantity is a positive relationship, which is causing this upward sloping curve. And to some people this seems a little counterintuitive, because oftentimes people feel like if the price is lower, a seller has to sell a lot more to be able to make up for the fact that the price is so low and they're not making a lot of profit. The misconception there is that at low prices, the profit is so small, sometimes it's like a negative profit. Sellers can't afford to sell as many units of output at those low prices. They can't. Their costs of production are too high. So as price goes up and their profit margin increases, they're willing and able to supply a higher number of units.
So this slide is talks about the relationship between price and quantity supplied. So you see, as the price goes up, the quantity supplied also goes up. This is a chain, which is one of the relationships between price and quantity supplied. If you remember back to demand, the relationship was different. So as the price went up for demand, the quantity demanded would go down. That was an inverse relationship. This is a direct relationship where as the price goes up, the quantity supplied is going to go up, and this is notated by a movement along the curve, which we'll get into in just a second.
So that brings us to the law of supply, which we've now stated a few times, but you just need to know that that's what this is called. The law of supply simply tells us as the selling price of a product goes up, the quantity supplied increases, because sellers are willing and able to sell more at each price. And when the selling price of a product goes down, the quantity supplied decreases, because sellers are willing and able to sell a lower quantity.
And so this determines the shape of the supply curve. We always see that the slope is going up. We have an increasing supply curve, and it goes from the left to the right, and this will help us when we talk about the shifts.
Little brain break for you. It's okay if you don't laugh out loud. Actually, they're laughing. They're totally laughing.
Yes.
They won't admit that they laughed, though, but that's all right. And some people still don't get it. No, that's all right.
What happened?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. The next section of this presentation gets into elasticity of supply. And as you know from learning about elasticity of demand, elasticity simply measures responsiveness, but now we're looking at the responsiveness of producers to price changes rather than consumers. So we know that the law of supply is always going to be true. As price goes up, quantity supplied increases, but when that price rises, how many more units will sellers want to sell? And when the price drops, how many fewer units will sellers be able to sell? So how responsive are they going to be to those price changes?
So the first one is an inelastic supply curve. And producers aren't very responsive to changes in price. So the supply curve, again, is vertical. We see that if you put a dot on top of this eye, that's going to be inelastic. So if you can draw the picture, it's really going to be helpful to you when trying to figure out some of these ideas. So examples could be goods with inputs that aren't readily available, or goods with high mobile inputs.
Products that cannot be easily stored, and products that cannot be made quickly. So obviously producers don't have the ability to adjust to those price changes. So a couple examples would be things like
antiques, for things that can't be made quickly. You can't just produce more antiques. You have to wait a couple hundred years for them to actually be worth anything.
Good call.
So you can't, it's hard to produce those things.
Good call. Or let's say you're manufacturing a product and one of the inputs that you need to make your product comes from the other side of the world, and the transportation path was interrupted by a natural disaster and you can't get the resources you need right away, I mean, then your supply is going to be more inelastic. You're not going to be able to produce a bunch more even if you want to produce them quickly. Or bread at a bakery. You know, a baker is not going to bake hundreds of extra loaves of bread and have them on deck ready to sell because nobody wants to buy day-old bread. That's why they put it on sale.
That's why it goes,
and it's gross. Yeah.
Elasticity of supply, where you have an elastic supply, producers are very responsive. Again, so this is determining the responsiveness, or how much they change their behavior when a price changes. So if the supply curve is horizontal or more horizontal, we're going to see that producers will be willing to change the amount that they supply even when price increases or decreases a little bit. So again, you can draw that E to help you understand that an elastic supply curve is going to be a very flat one. And again, if you can draw the picture and see the relationship between price and quantity as it pertains to elasticity, it's going to be a little easier for you. So a few examples you can see here: goods with inputs that are readily available. You can get to them easily. You don't have to move goods across a long place or a long transportation line. For instance, we can go get pumpkins pretty close, right, during Halloween time. There's a pumpkin patch just right down the road.
There is. Good example, Mr. Headland.
I just thought of that one.
Good.
I didn't have that one prepared.
That was genius, off the cuff. All right, so the determinants of supply elasticity then, in summary, are the availability of the inputs, mobility of inputs, storage capacity for the products that are produced, and the time needed to adjust to a price change. These are going to affect how responsive producers can be.
So you may want to pause this and just think about a few of those things again.
And some examples here. Bananas would be relatively inelastic. It takes a whole growing season to grow a banana. Yogurt would be more elastic because it would be very simple to get those ingredients needed to make yogurt and produce extra, have your factory running 24 hours a day instead of 12 hours a day or whatever. Antiques, you already mentioned that one. Good call. It's like you knew what we were going to do here. Antiques are inelastic, and medical care is relatively inelastic as well because it takes a long time to make a doctor. Another brain break for you. Feel free to do this at your leisure, and if you're brave, you can come show us in class.
The next topic is changes in supply. So this is when supply is actually going to move. The curve is going to move in one direction or the other. So any change, so what is a change in supply? It's any change that alters the quantity supplied at every single price, not just one price. So we see that when every price is altered, or every change in quantity is altered at every price, you're going to see the whole curve shift either to the left or to the right.
This is an example of what it looks like on the graph. So you'll see that an increase in supply is a shift to the right, and a decrease in supply is a shift to the left. This is one of the points of misunderstanding oftentimes for students, because it looks like the shift to the right is getting lower, and so students often think, oh, it's getting lower on my sheet of paper, that must be a decrease in supply.
Yeah, that always gets me screwed up.
Yeah, so one way to remember this is that left is less. Left is a decrease. Any shift to the left is less, any shift to the right is an increase.
And the acronym that we're going to use to help us remember what the changes in supply, remember the delta sign up there indicates a change. So what change in supply? We're going to use the acronym TIGERS. So we have those examples here, and we're going to go through them.
T stands for technological advancements. So anytime technology advances in production, it's going to make that production more efficient and allow for supply to increase. A company would hopefully not adopt a new technology that caused less efficient production. So hopefully we would not see an example of technology causing supply to decrease. Hopefully it will always be that technology causes supply to increase. For example, if a restaurant gets a new computer system, rather than having their waitresses just do, the paper pen ordering and hooking their tickets in the back of the kitchen for the cooks, and all that kind of stuff, hand calculating your bill and the tax, and that's very slow, very tedious. The computer makes things a lot faster, so supply can increase.
An international event or a natural disaster is the next one. That's the I, so use the I in international event. And anything such as a war, or a revolution or a natural disaster that occurs is going to shift the supply curve to the left. I mean, this is, I can't think of anything that's going to really increase the supply of something. So usually this one's going to always be a decrease, which is going to be less, shift to the left. And it's going to interrupt supply lines. If you can't, these people that are trying to get out of their house on a boat, it's going to be hard to get a lot of things into that area. So supply, it's going to usually increase the cost and decrease the profits. So we see that it's going to be a shift to the left.
Government intervention is when the government gets involved somehow in the production process by either putting a fee or tax or regulation, imposing a fee, tax, or regulation on production of a good or service, which would cause supply to decrease, or subsidizing production of a good or service, which would cause supply to increase. So here's a couple examples that go along with that. Let's say you own a car dealership and you sell Toyota Corollas, and the import tax on Toyota Corollas increases, and Toyota Corollas are not manufactured in the United States. So as you bring them into the country to sell them from your car dealership, you have to pay a tax now, a higher tax than before. That increases your cost of production, which is going to decrease your profit per unit of output. When your profit per unit of output decreases, supply decreases or shifts to the left. On the other hand, a subsidy is kind of like when the government gives you some money to help pay your cost of production and keep you in business. Dairy farming is an industry that's heavily subsidized, or dairy farmers wouldn't be able to stay in business. And this money that the government gives the dairy farmers allows them to break even or be profitable and thus stay in business. So supply of dairy farmers will increase when the industry is subsidized. And that's good because we need, milk, cheese.
Yes, I love cheese.
Ice cream.
My kids go through so much dang yogurt. Oh my gosh. The next one is expectations of future price changes. So this is about the possibility of a price change in the future. So if producers expect the price of a good to go up in the future, the supply is going to decrease to the left, and this makes sense. Producers would be more willing to sell at a higher price than a lower price. And if they expect the price to go up in 2 weeks, they're not going to sell anything today, or they're going to sell a lot less today. They'd prefer to sell things in 2 weeks. So the supply today is going to go down. And equally, the same thing happens going the other direction as well. If prices are expected to go down, they're going to want to sell today. So if Farmer Joe hears that the price of corn is going to increase, he'll wait to sell his corn because he'd prefer those higher prices. If he expects I'm getting creeped out by looking at Farmer Joe right now. If he expects the price to go down next month, he's going to try to unload his crop right now that he has, and that's going to increase the supply today. So the thing to remember about expectations of prices is that it's what is the price is expected to change in the future. What happens to supply today? And we're worried about the today part of the supply.
I have to just point out before we move to the next slide. Do you remember when it was cool to just have one overall strap?
Yes, I did.
And then one.
Did you roll your pants?
I rolled my pants.
You rolled, fold, and then.
And sometimes pin.
Pin. You want to make sure. Now they just have skinny jeans.
Yeah.
You don't
much smarter.
Yeah, you don't have to do that.
Okay, resource
Is that
costs.
a technological increase?
I think it might be. Supply increases?
It has to be.
I don't know.
It has to be. A lot more skinny jeans out there nowadays.
Nice. Resource cost is what the R stands for, and resource cost just has to do with the things that you use to produce your good or service, the factors of production that you need. So if your cost of production, your land, labor, and capital that you need to make your good or service, if your cost of production go up, then it's more expensive for you to produce your item, and your profits go down, so supply decreases. If your cost of production go down, then your profit goes up and supply increases. So remember, if you can figure out in which direction profit moves, then that's the direction that the supply curve is going to shift as well. So here's a little example you can take a look at.
And then lastly, the number of sellers in the market. So in tigers here, this is the S in the number of sellers, and this makes a lot of sense. When there are more firms in the market, the supply is going to go up. When there's less firms or businesses in the market, the supply is going to go down. So if we have a bunch of pizza joints and a few of them leave, there's not going to be as much pizza around. So the supply of pizza would go down. This one's pretty straightforward. You think of a farmer's market or something like that. If there's a few more stands, there's going to be more green beans because what do you get at a farmer's market? Green beans,
Apples.
Cucumbers,
Yeah.
you know, those
Brussels sprouts. One of my new
Brussels
faves.
sprouts. Oh,
Yeah.
so you get cilantro at a farmer's market. You get so much more.
It's a better deal.
It's good.
All right, good stuff, you guys. We'll see you in class. Peace out.